Okay, you can get the
Yeah, okay.
So good morning everyone, and welcome here to this two-day course or retreat on the topic of Good Look Mahamudra. So just a few logistics before we begin. So the schedule for today and tomorrow are more or less the same. So each day we're starting at 9:30 and we're going to have 4 sessions each day, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. So the sessions will be 1 hour 15 long. So the first session will go till 10:45 and then we'll have a morning tea break for 30 minutes. And then from 11:15 to 12:30 the second session. And then we'll have a 1 hour lunch break till 1:30. And then the afternoon session from 1:30 till 2:45. And then another tea break till 3:15. And then the last session 4:30. So more or less same schedule today and tomorrow. In the sessions we'll be doing a mixture of theory, meditation and question answer. So for this we can be very interactive. If you have any questions, please raise your hand and we'll take the questions as we go. And of course we're going to be meditating on this topic, so we're going to have a mixture of meditation and theory. And we're going to really get the most out of this weekend, we're going to be running both days in mode of silence, meaning in the morning and afternoon tea break and at lunchtime, to maintain silence in the breaks. If you really have to use your phone or talk to someone, please go on the other side of the car park, so at least like 100, 200 metres away, if you really have to talk or use your phone. But again, I would really suggest to switch them off for the day, maintain the silence, and you're going to get the most out of this day, both days, if we can really maintain that silence. And of course, if you're talking here, you're going to disturb other people as well. So I really encourage you to maintain that silence well today and tomorrow. We're going to be following this text here that everyone hopefully should have a copy of, called the Geluk Kagyu Tradition of Mahamudra. And what we see in this text here is that some of the text is in bold, some of it's not bold. The bold is what's called the root text. It's a very short text. And then the other text that's not bold is a commentary on the text, or partly a commentary on the text, a part commentary from the Panchen Lama. So that's what we're going to be following. And also in the back, you'll notice that you've got some charts in the back as well, so we'll be using those from time to time as well. There's a lot of information in this text, so what we're going to be doing is covering this text over 2 years. So the first half of the text we're going to cover this weekend, and then the second half of the text we're going to finish next year, roughly the same time. We'll also have a weekend on this next year to finish the text. So before we begin then, let's start with a short meditation just to relax the body, relax the mind, and to set a good motivation. So if you'd like to find a nice comfortable posture, and of course make sure you've got your mobile phone switched off or in flight mode. If you have them on silent in the meditations, you'll get this little bling, 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 which is very annoying. So please make sure they're in flight mode or switched off. allowing your awareness to descend into the body and simply become aware of sensations throughout the body. And if you notice any areas of tightness or tension in any part of the body, then use the out-breath to relax and release that tightness or tension as best you can. And bringing your awareness to the area of your face and softening and relaxing all the muscles in the face. The mouth and jaw soft and relaxed. And all the muscles around the eyes soft and relaxed. This way allowing the entire body to become completely relaxed, completely at ease. And relaxing more deeply with each out-breath. And allowing the breathing to settle into its natural rhythm. Not trying to control or regulate the breath in any way. Simply allowing it to flow naturally and effortlessly. And then give yourself permission to let go of any hopes or fears, worries or concerns about the past or the future. To give yourself permission to let go of all of these things for the duration of this short meditation. And simply allowing the mind to come to rest in the present moment. And simply become aware of the rhythm of your breath. noticing if it's long or short, deep or shallow, rough or smooth, without trying to modify the breath in any way. So simply noticing the rhythm of your breath. And then think about your motivation for coming here this weekend. And then set the best possible motivation you can for attending this Mahamudra weekend. And then trying to expand your motivation out to include others. That you're not just doing this for your own benefit, that you're doing it so you can be of more benefit to those around you. So then, keeping this motivation in mind, we can begin our discussions here this morning. So let's begin by having a look at the title of the text that we're going to be looking at. And the title of the text here is The Main Path of the Victors, a root text for the precious Gelug Kagyu tradition of Mahamudra by Panchen Losang Chegi Gelsen, who lived in the 16th, 17th century. So the main title here, The Main Path of the Victors. The word victor here is a translation of the Sanskrit word jina. And jina has the idea of conqueror, someone who's gained victory over something. So this is another term for Buddha. And so a jina or a Buddha is someone who's conquered what's called the two obscurations. And the two obscurations are what's called the afflictive obscurations and the cognitive obscurations. The afflictive obscurations, very simply, is our mental afflictions. Attachment, anger, jealousy, craving, fear, anxiety, together with our distorted view of reality. And the cognitive obscurations are very subtle stains in our mind that cause this mistaken dualistic appearance that we receive. And we'll be looking at these two in much more detail in the second half of the text. So in next year's weekend retreat, we'll look at those in quite a lot of detail. So here then, the title, it says The Main Path of the Victors. Meaning, if we want to become a victor, if we want to become Buddha, then we need to engage in this practice here, the main path. The main way to become a Buddha is to realise the nature of our mind, to overcome these afflictive and cognitive obscurations. And here in the title, the subtitle, a root text for the precious Gelug tradition of Kagyu tradition of Mahamudra. This word Mahamudra this is a Sanskrit term which we can divide into. Maha means great. And mudra means stamp or seal. And this is a little bit like historically in the past when there was some official document that was written. They would roll it up and then they'd melt some wax on the letter and then they'd have a little stamp and they'd stamp it to make it, and that meant it was authentic. So that's similar here, the idea of mudra. It's a stamp or seal. And what we're talking about here, of course, is the idea of emptiness. That everything that exists, nothing exists independently. Everything is empty of independent existence. So emptiness is that fact. Emptiness is the fact that everything is empty of independent existence. Nothing exists independently. So emptiness stamps all phenomena, meaning all phenomena have that as their ultimate nature, that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence. So then Mahamudra, the great seal or great stamp, is referring to emptiness. But not just emptiness in general, but here in particular, in Mahamudra, we're talking about the emptiness of our mind. The fact that our mind also does not exist independently. So therefore, Mahamudra practice is often referred to as nature of the mind practice. We're coming to realize the nature of our mind, the fact that our mind is empty of independent existence. And here, it says that this is a root text for the precious Gelug Kagyu tradition of Mahamudra. So again, root text is the parts of the text here that are in bold. So that is a very short text that the Panchen Losam Chegi Gelsen wrote. And then, as often is the case when some great Indian or Tibetan master writes a very short root text about something, often they'll then write a much longer commentary on that text to explain the details of the text. So also the Panchen Losam Chegi Gelsen wrote a commentary on his own text, very long one. So what I've done here is I've taken parts of that commentary out and added it in here to make it a little bit longer so it's easier to understand. So that's what we have here. We have the root text plus some of his commentary. Not all of it because it's a very extensive one. So that's what we're going to be looking at. The root text plus some of his own commentary on his root text. And it says here that this is the root text for the precious Gelug Kagyu tradition of Mahamudra. So Gelug and Kagyu are both schools within Tibetan Buddhism. So let's see where Mahamudra fits into the bigger Buddhist picture. When the Buddha achieved enlightenment, the very first teaching he gave was the Four Noble Truths. And on the basis of the Four Noble Truths, we have Buddhism being spread from India to other countries through originally the Pali language. And these teachings through the Pali language would spread to Sri Lanka and then up through, down through Southeast Asia, Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, down through Southeast Asia. The teachings were spread through the Pali language and they were based on the Four Noble Truths. And so these Buddhist traditions now, when they go back to the original texts, they'll go back to the text written in the Pali language. And all these Buddhist traditions collectively are now called the Theravada Buddhist traditions. And based on these Four Noble Truths teachings, the final goal of the spiritual path is what's called nirvana. And nirvana is the state of liberation from suffering, personal liberation from suffering. But then we also have, a little bit later, Buddhism also spreading from India through the Sanskrit language. And when it spread through the Sanskrit language, the teachings were mainly based on the Buddha's teachings on what's called the perfection of wisdom, the prajna paramita in Sanskrit. So these systems of teachings were the sort of the core of the teachings that then spread over the Himalayas, onto the Silk Route, into China, Korea, Japan, down to Vietnam, and then later over the Himalayas into Tibet. So all of those Buddhist traditions, when they go back to the original text, they go back to the ones written in the Sanskrit language. And these traditions collectively now are called the Mahayana Buddhist traditions. And in these Buddhist traditions, the final goal of the spiritual path is enlightenment, which is not just our own liberation from suffering, but it's the further goal of enlightenment, so then we can help to liberate everyone else from suffering as well. So enlightenment is a further step beyond nirvana, and to really appreciate the difference between those two, that's part of the second half of the text. We'll be looking at that next year. Any questions so far? Anything not clear?
About timing, when do we start the Sanskrit tradition?
Well, of course, both were existent from the time of the Buddha, but the time when these Four Noble Truths started spreading from India, I think was first to Sri Lanka, around 250 years after the time of the Buddha. And then the Sanskrit tradition started spreading from India about, I think, 400 years after the Buddha, something like that, 400 or 500 years.
Question about the difference between nirvana and enlightenment. I understand that actually nirvana is meant to talking about the liberation of spiritual obstacles, or
right.
And one of these obstacles it's the from the self.
Correct.
So what I'm asking is, how is that different from enlightenment? Because if we are to get out from the self, it means also seeing others.
Right.
So it's sort of like, it's the same in a way.
Right. So what you're saying about this self, realizing no self, grasping to self is this. So if we can get rid of this, no self, anger, attachment, jealousy, get rid of that, we achieve nirvana. But still there's this. These are subtle stains in the mind that cause this mistaken dualistic appearance that we have now. And to move from nirvana to enlightenment, we need to get rid of this. So this is a step beyond realizing no self. Realizing no self is not going to get rid of this, but it will lead to achieving nirvana. But again, the details of this we're going to look at in detail next year, the second half of the text. So maybe we can leave it till next year. You'll find out more information then. Okay. So then when Buddhism came to Tibet, it first came from India around the 8th century. And it came from India, particularly through great Indian master Padmasambhava, and through his teachings we have the first school of Tibetan Buddhism being formed, called the Nyingma school. And the system of teachings that Padmasambhava brought into Tibet is called Dzogchen. And then after this time, a king came to power in Tibet, didn't like Buddhism and tried to wipe out Buddhism in Tibet. So it sort of went a little bit underground for a couple of centuries. And then around the 10th, 11th century, we have another